Dr. Gary is going to be joining us. Yes, I think.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Gary.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Gary, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Let's see how we go. There we are.
Well, yes, here we are. So thank you, Dr. Gary, from joining us all the way from Tasmania. And it's just wonderful to see you. Fan moment for me. As you know, I am,
I think you're crazy, okay?
it's a huge fan moment. You can make out from the slight amount of nervousness I'm facing in being able to address you. Huge fan all the way from India. It's been so kind of you to be able to address all of us, and it's wonderful. So much gratitude for joining us.
It's Pallavi, it's fine. I mean, yeah, look, I'm a great fan of India. Actually, I've only ever been there once, but I followed. I was inspired by Gandhi.
Oh, that's just so wonderful.
And so the whole passive civil disobedience, the Salt March, I think 1934 it was.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's been a fair amount of cricketing discussions between India and Australia over the years as well.
Absolutely. And I will just very shortly introduce you, Dr. Gary, because words are not enough for your introduction. But Dr. Gary Fettke is an orthopedic surgeon based out of Tasmania, and he faced a long legal battle because he decided to tell his diabetic patients, well, why lose a limb when we could just alter your food habits? So I would actually just, and there is something which I have stolen a quote from you, Dr. Gary, where you have said that science evolves by being challenged, not by being followed. And a low carb, high fat diet, when you see the benefits of LCHF diet, there's just no turning back. So with your own quote, welcome to this webinar today. And I would love if you could share your journey as to how, all of this came about and your experiences. Please welcome Dr. Gary to this webinar.
Well, Pallavi, thank you very much. An honour to have a chat in India and New Delhi, but without actually being in your next door neighbour. Just by way of, it's about 5 degrees Celsius here, so it's a little bit cooler than in Delhi, I think.
Delhi is very hot today. It's a hot day here.
Oh, look, I mean, where does one's journey start? I mean, it starts in your childhood. There's multiple points. I have a long family history of social justice from my grandmother and my mother. And my mother died when I was a child, so I've always, and then there's been some injustice that happened in our family with Belinda, with her healthcare. And so probably I started in medicine because I saw that my mother's health she died as a result of someone missing a diagnosis. So that happened when I was 16. That's very formative. And I probably started medicine because of that. And so then, you do medicine, you believe your teachers, you believe your textbooks, you believe that everything that you're told has actually been vetted and it's been proven and scientifically, shown. And then over time, I sort of explain I was a fat kid. I struggled with my weight as a kid. I played a lot of sport in teenage years and came down. I ate by that food pyramid. I was trying to outrun a bad diet. I was exercising, but this stuff we've all heard of. And then I actually got sick. In my late 30s, I ended up with a tumour on the base of my brain. In retrospect, I had hypertension, I had metabolic syndrome, I was pre-diabetic. I had this massive pituitary tumour. One day I was operating, then I started losing my vision. 5 days later, I'd had a craniotomy. and started a journey of radiotherapy and chemotherapy for 10 years. And all the way along, I ended up being on all sorts of medications. But in the midst of that, because it was a pituitary tumour, I ended up with some hormonal problems and Addison's disease and diabetes insipidus. And I had to learn endocrinology. I mean, I'm an orthopaedic surgeon, you know, bones and joints and stuff like that, but I actually needed to learn endocrinology for my own basic well-being. And I learned it for myself, but I didn't actually realise how wrong our education was until about 10 years ago when I started looking into the role of sugar and cancer, because I had my own issues. And in retrospect, my tumour, which is, I still have, and I'll never get rid of it. And so it's still, that's part of my life. I call it a Rottweiler. So when people say, oh, you know, you're pretty hardcore about this, and I say, absolutely, I've got a vested interest. I've got my own health to look after. I've got my family's future to look at. And only 2 weeks ago, we had a little granddaughter, our second grandchild come. And so I'm on this journey, not for just myself. I'm on it for my family, my children, my grandchildren, my community. And then my community used to be just in Launceston, Tasmania, and then it became Australia. And now it's international because of standing up for what was right. And what was right and proper and based on prevention. I mean, medicine. So, I mean, the science about low carb, LCHF, low carb healthy fat, keto, it's completely based on rock solid biochemistry. And you probably saw the thing I put, the tweet up I put up the other day, where I said that nutrition within the body and the cell is science, it's biochemistry. Outside of the cell, it's politics. Money, and surprisingly an enormous amount of religious ideology. And it's once you understand the game, then you can play by the rules. So anybody who's saying that what we're talking about is dangerous has fallen for the propaganda from the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, or political agendas or religious ideology. And I know they're big statements, but in all that I'm advocating, you're advocating, is to eat fresh, local, seasonal food. If it comes in a plastic bag or a cardboard box that has a label on it, avoid it. And tell me exactly where that's dangerous. And so anytime you hear anything that's actually contra to what we're talking about, it's very simple. Within minutes, we can track it down to vested interests.
Absolutely.
So for me, the biochemistry is what I base my decisions on. Mm-hmm. Someone asked me the other day how I keep on top of all the medical literature, all the information that comes to me. And I openly admit to not being able to keep, you can't read 10,000 articles a day. Whereas Twitter, and I'll say Twitter over other forms of social media, you work out an area you've got an interest in, and people funnel information to you.
I agree.
And I recognise that can be cognitive dissonance. I realise you can get caught up in the whirlpool. Mm-hmm. And so, trolls are quite good from time to time. Mm-hmm. They need comfort, but they actually give you the other side of the argument, and you can actually, dissect those. But I fall back, the statement I said is, I fall back on biochemistry, anatomy. Biochemistry, anatomy never change. And the third most powerful thing is common sense, of which has been completely abandoned in society, and particularly in medicine.
Absolutely.
So, I suppose my journey is my health, my family's health. And then 10 years ago, because of the cancer, even though I had to originally diagnosed was 20 years ago this year, actually. So it's an interesting anniversary. When I started realizing the role of sugar and realized that my original PET scan for my pituitary lit up like a Christmas tree, a big bright light where the tumor was. Mm-hmm. And the PET scan, for those people who don't know, is actually a scan that you inject glucose into your body,
metabolism, absolutely.
and the tumor takes up glucose.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, my tumor loves glucose. And the moment that happened, I mean, and again, it was, you know, I knew this for 10 years, but I didn't know it. You know, I hadn't observed, I hadn't put the link there that maybe the glucose was actually the food of the tumor. And that's not taught. It's not taught in medical school. It's not taught in cancer management. Cancer management frustrates me because it's talking about, you know, surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy, and failing to look at the central role of nutrition. Like most oncologists, most patients, I get contacted by people around the world. So I'm been told to eat healthy. But in Australia, and I know in the US, they have charity days for cancer foundations, which are about having morning teas, having your cups of tea and your cake and your biscuits and your sugar-laden food. And we know there's such a strong link between sugar, diabetes, insulin, and cancer. And the strongest, one of the strongest, most powerful growth factors of cancer is insulin.
Insulin, absolutely, absolutely.
So from a cancer point of view, we can't starve cancer of glucose. You know, one of those things people say, oh, if you stop eating sugar, you'll starve a cancer of glucose. You can't do that. The body will still produce a background amount of glucose via gluconeogenesis. What you can starve a cancer of is insulin. So we only produce insulin as a result of the carbohydrate we eat. If we don't eat the carbohydrate, my pancreas has been on holiday for 10 years. My pancreas produces a very small amount of insulin, probably produces more than average amount of glucagon to keep my blood glucose in the right spectrum. But for me, I have made a big effort to not be on, you know, to be on a low insulin diet effectively for many years. Has it cured my cancer? No. Okay, but it slowed it up. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. One would hope that it stopped it, but I have to admit that it will never go away. But if you can slow something up and allow the bodies to actually, you know, heal itself.
Yes.
And I think that all ties up a little bit with the COVID at the moment.
Absolutely.
In that our immune system is critical to our health. Whether or not it's an antigen or, you know, a virus or a bacteria hit the body, or a damaged cancer cell that's within the body, it's our immune system that actually is the one which is going to manage it.
Absolutely.
And the T lymphocytes are the most critical one in viruses and in cancer management. You know, the T killer cells are the ones that go around and mop up damaged cells. And that whole process of autophagy, of clearing of cells, is actually all related to our diet and fasting. But what's fascinating about T cells is they're inhibited by alcohol. So the T killer cells, the T lymphocytes, our first line of defense against a virus, against a cancer, are inhibited by the effects of alcohol. But sugar and carbohydrates, so fructose and glucose, are actually metabolized in the liver via the aldehyde pathway into alcohol. So apart from the effects of fructose, and that's in my talks on inflammation and fructose metabolism.
Absolutely.
The metabolites of that are uric acid. Uric acid inhibits blood flow and it pushes our blood pressure, but it also affects our mobility of our white cells. It affects our T cells. So in a society at the moment which has got coronavirus running around, or every other infection which we've been struggling with for forever, and an increasing rate of cancer, we have people drinking alcohol, and we've got our liver producing alcohol, all based on sugar and carbs. You don't produce masses of alcohol by eating a diet high in what do you call it, fresh food. But you do produce a mountain of alcohol within your liver. And I'm using that term loosely, it's aldehyde, but you produce a mountain of alcohol by eating sugar and carbs. And in Australia, I don't know what's happened in India, but in Australia with the coronavirus, our government has seen deemed that, you know, keeping the alcohol stores open is an essential service. So 70% of Australians, I don't know the world data, but I know the Australian data, which is stupid. 70% of our people in lockdown are drinking more alcohol and turning to sugar and comfort food.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It's how it's happening in India as well.
And you just go, and again, if you follow me on social media, and I suppose a few other outspoken people, our frustration shines through from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you know, that old face palm, you know, really?
I completely agree. It does. Absolutely. I totally want to put this emoji. Absolutely. It's so true.
I'm doing more of these and a fair number of the poo emojis. So, I mean, I think the science is incontrovertible. I mean, for your listeners, the sort of the definitive description of fructose metabolism was really only in 2010, then into 2010, 2011, in a journal called Physiological Reviews by Luke Tappy. The landmark article. It was a game changer for me. I was looking at sugar as a cancer thing, but that metabolism of fructose by Luke Tappy, I went, I get it now. I can see. And in my naivety, I said to Belinda, everyone in the world will work this out within 6 months. Right, that's nearly 10 years ago. And here we're still battling the perils of sugar because of industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true.
So as the years have gone by, and I got reported to the medical board because I said, stop feeding sugar to my patients with diabetes, you know, in the hospital. You know, I found out that my patients with diabetes were in hospital with a gangrenous toe, deep cellulitis, deep infection. You know, I'm nibbling away at toes and feet, chopping legs off. They're giving them ice cream 3 meals a day. And I said, would you stop giving ice cream to my patients with out of control sugars, more sugar? And then I was told that that's the dietary guidelines for hospitals. That's what hospitals recommend. And it's still the same thing around the world. That's a basic premise. If you look at the, you know, and I had a Facebook page for a while called My Hospital Food. I got people to send in photographs of their hospital food from around the world. It was just depressing. I mean, the hospital food is just, on the whole, sugar and carbohydrate laden, full of polyunsaturated seed oils.
Yes.
To me, which is just the perfect storm for ill health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't agree with you more. And it's just such a frustrating, it's so much of frustration when I see these kind of things, especially now that, again, it's, you know, it's just so much of common sense. It's not even a rocket science here. It's just so much of common sense. But I think the carbohydrates have landed us up in such a case of severe carbohydrate addiction that it's just caused that kind of a brain fog or a brain clouding, and we don't want to see anything beyond that, which is both scary and tragic at the same time. And thank you so much for addressing this topic, because this is what this is where my question was, that what is this whole game between inflammation, between nutrition? Where does the fruit come in from? Now, again, this whole fruit myth, from where did it generate? Why are we so fixated on having fruit juices, eating fruit, the only fruit diet? And where is it all going to lead us for the corona pandemic? What's it all going to do? It's such a vicious cycle. So I think you are the best person whom I could, ask for about to break this whole myth about this fruit and how much fruit is important and the role between the whole inflammation and the nutrition.
Well, that's a little topic, isn't
it? Absolutely.
But look, I suppose I dared to describe, and I'll say it, I dared to describe a nutritional model of inflammation. I'm very proud to have done it, because I know when I was, I put this jigsaw puzzle together, and I took other people's work, and it's not my work, and I've built on the shoulders of others. others, but I can remember just in one long weekend, it all came together in my head. And I was just incredibly excited. I said, I think I've got it worked out. And that is the combination of fructose, refined carbohydrate, and polyunsaturated seed oils together creates the perfect storm. It creates inflammation in every blood vessel wall, in every organ of the body. The addition of the polyunsaturated oils become highly oxidized, and they become the structural components of our cell membranes, our mitochondrial membranes. They become the structural components of an embryo. So when a baby starts, at the very first 2 cells,
oh my goodness,
and it's multiplying, those cell membranes are full of polyunsaturated seed oils, linoleic acid oils.
Gosh.
And whereas 100 years ago, 200 years ago, the amount of linoleic acid was about 4 or 5%. Even in the 1950s, it was around about 6 or 7%. We've, since the 1960s, pushed up the amount of omega-6 fatty acids within our fat, and that fat's under our skin, it's in our brains, it's in every cell membrane and every mitochondrial membrane. And the mitochondria are the engines of the cells, you know. And we've in fact now in some studies suggest that could be up to 30% linoleic acid within our fat. So that an omega-6, or sorry, a polyunsaturated oil, of which there's omegas 3, 6, 9, 12, you know, goes all the way up. The odd and the even numbers, but overall, the more double bonds you have in your fat, more points of oxidation they are, the more the points of weakness. So 100 years ago, 50 years ago, our cell membranes had a very, very small amount of fat in them, of inflammatory material. And now it's 1/3 of our cell membranes. And an embryo is literally, you know, our children, our babies born nowadays are born in a highly inflamed state, in a highly oxidized state. And we wonder why children's cancer is increasing at 3% per annum. We're wondering why there's this rapid increase in type 1 diabetes in children. We're wondering about all the allergies which are around. Now, I can never prove my model, my hypothesis. And that's all it ever was. All I did was structure a biochemical scenario.
Absolutely.
And then say, okay, why don't we do the opposite of that? Why don't we cut out our sugar? Why don't we cut out our carbohydrate? Why don't we cut out our seed oils? And guess what? When you do that, you start getting healthier. We turn around metabolic syndrome. We bring people's blood pressure down. Their mental health improves. Their weight comes down. Diabetes is put into remission, type 2. Type 1 diabetes settles completely. Tim notes, Tim and I were in a Q&A on Saturday, question and answer thing on a low carb meeting. And Tim made a great comment, and he said, nobody ever dies from diabetes. They die from the mismanagement of it.
Yes.
So either they're eating carbohydrate they don't need to, or they're having medication which pushes their blood glucose down, or as I say, the medical management of diabetes is either to push drugs to push it into the tissue where you don't want it, to stop you absorbing it, or to make you pee it out, to pass it in the urine. All of the drugs in diabetes are not required if you don't eat it.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, you know, it drives me insane. No, I'm not insane. I'm not mad. I'm not. I suffer from hyperpragmatism. You know, meaning this is it. We either do this, or we're going to remain sick and getting sicker. So, and I'll come to the fruit. I'm coming to that. You'll find that I take some time to get to the answer.
Absolutely, please, absolutely. This is for everybody's benefit, because this whole fruit theory is, and the fact that we are having our toast and our Nutellas and our jams and a glass full of fruit juice, orange juice, which is supposed to give us a shot of vitamin C in the morning, and that's the healthy breakfast which everybody's taking these days. This is, I would please do take all the time. It's wonderful.
I think I started with the inflammation model.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's really what I was very proud of, putting that together and realized, because you can't, all I was trying to do is let's argue the science. Let's not discuss association evidence. Let's just talk about biochemistry and live action results.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've got someone with type 2 diabetes, you give them glucose, their blood glucose goes up.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't give them glucose, it stays stable. So because I had a website called No Fructose, the question kept coming at me, what do you say about fruit? What do you say about fruit? And again, I'll pay some acknowledgement to Zoe Harcum, who filled in some gaps there. And I've got a talk on YouTube called Is Fruit Good or Bad for You? And it's been
Mm-hmm.
seen a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But that's in a nutshell. So I go through the science, the biochemistry, the politics, and the history of it. So fruit is effectively sugar on a tree. And it's over-advertised to us, both in nature and in the market, for being better for us than it really is. So I look at it, I go back and hit, what evolutionary aspects of fruit. So the fruit that we eat today is completely different to the fruit that we evolved upon. The fruit of today has got more sugar in it and less fiber. And the more fruit sugar you put into it, or you genetically modify into it, and the less fiber, you've improved the palatability, you improve the shelf life, the transportability, and the profit.
Absolutely.
In the same time frame, not only have we engineered nutrition out of it, our soils become depleted of nutrients. So the apple of 50 years ago was significantly higher in nutrients than the apple of today. And it goes across a lot of our food sources. So that's another sidearm I drift down is the environment and our soil. I'm fascinated by soil. But effectively, fruit wants us to eat it so that we can propagate its seed. So fruit in nature forever has advertised itself to us by being bright, shiny, sweet, and addictive. And that's that whole fructose metabolism. That fructose is there at a time of plenty, so the end of summer, beginning of autumn, in the temperate climates. That's when fruit comes into season. That's before winter. The fructose drives behavior. So we eat the sugar in the fruit. It drives behavior. We eat more and more and more of it. The fruit loves us to eat it because we're going to propagate the seed. The fruit hasn't worked out that we're going to drop the seed into a porcelain bowl and send it down to the, to the local sewage treatment. So we're not actually doing the right thing by the fruit. Our bodies love fruit because fruit, the sugar in fruit, will turn that into fat for winter hibernation. And it's brilliant. So the fructose will have an effect on our hypothalamus. Mm-hmm. It will drive our sweetness chasing behavior. It will inhibit leptin. Leptin's the hormone that's produced by our fat to tell us we shouldn't be eating. So it inhibits our ability to feel full. So it actually makes us hungry. It stimulates ghrelin in the stomach. So ghrelin is the other one which makes our tummy rumble. Fructose is a wonderful designer drug in nature to make us addicted to it. So we will stuff our faces with it to get fat for winter. It's brilliant. So in nature, a tree is only ripe for a certain amount of time.
Yes.
The bears will hibernate. Animals will source that food when it's available. They'll gorge themselves to get fat for winter. Mm-hmm. The trouble is, the food industry has worked that on out, and that's why they drop the sugar in, knowing, and I'll say knowing now, 100 years ago, maybe they didn't know. They just know it tasted good. But now they clearly know that increasing the sugar content of food and fruit will drive behavior for us to actually eat more.
Yes.
Very hard to eat one piece of fruit when you put a whole bowl of it in front of people.
Totally agree on that.
Because it's bright, it's shiny, it tastes good, it's sweet, and it will want you to have more. When you actually look, so sugar drives behavior, and again, there's a lot of evidence for that. But when you come back to fruit, it's always advertised as having a whole lot of extra nutrients. So when that fruit is good or bad for you talk, I actually go through the fiber, I go through the minerals, I go through the vitamins that are associated with it. And fruit is actually a very low quality nutrient food. It's full of sugar. The nutrients in it can be very, very readily replaced. I use in the talk green leafy vegetables. Okay, green leafy vegetables smash. Above ground vegetables, very low in carb. They literally, on virtually all of the fronts of fiber, we can go on to fiber. I think it's another interesting talk, side thing, because I think that's a big myth as well. But on fiber, spinach has infinitely more potassium than bananas. We've got, and same thing with the vitamin C, the phytonutrients. I mean, what people do like is actually dark chocolate has more phytonutrients than berries. So, and coffee. So therefore, go to your dark chocolate. So it literally, at a biochemical level, fruit is nowhere near good for us as it's advertised. As I say, in nature and in the shops. And certainly it doesn't need all those transport miles to be having, oranges from California out of season here in Australia. As I say to my patients, a lot of people like bananas right around the world. And I say, I'm yet to find a banana plantation in Tasmania. We're that little island way down the south end of Australia, of which I've got to drift onto cricket just for a second because I'm in India, okay? And there's a couple of thorns in the Indians over time called Ricky Ponting and David Byrne, who I know quite well. But I'd like to take personal responsibility because I've spoken to Ricky Ponting about this. He's got quite a good throwing arm, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
He's had one of the best throwing arms in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I put his right elbow back together when he was a teenager.
Ah.
So I'm sorry to all your Indian followers that I might be responsible for having a few run-outs or catches as a result of Ricky Ponting's right arm. Okay.
That's wonderful.
So that's purely name dropping, but I think there'll be a few people there who know exactly what I'm talking about. But in Tasmania, we're a southern climate. It's like you're very north of India. And I won't go on to northern Indian politics at the moment, which I heard on the radio today. Okay, so it's a bit of trouble brewing up the north there. But we don't have any banana plantations here.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all transported in. It's all treated with chemicals and preservatives, and we just don't need it, and it's driving behaviour. So once you actually realise that it's actually biochemically not that good for us, and again, like food, we've gone beyond that, and this is my work, Belinda, my wife's work, and Zoe Harkin's done some work in this aspect as well. Is what is the politics behind telling us that fruit's good?
Exactly.
So if we know that it's not good for us, particularly processed food, and I'll throw fruit in with processed food now, where did we come up with the myth that it is? And it's been driven by the food industry. So that I know you've got. What's your thing in India? I know it's 5 a day here in Australia. You have your fruit and vegetable 5 a day. In some countries, it's 7 a day. That number was completely made up.
And the most scary are, Dr. Gary, the fruit diets where you are supposed to eat only fruit, then nothing else. Those are the worst and so scary.
Well, the fruitarians, if you look at them, they're very, they're like this. They're running around high as a kite, they are not getting protein in their diet. They are not getting the healthy fats in your diet. And if you don't get healthy fats in your diet, you are missing out on all the fat-soluble vitamins. You're missing out on the building blocks. If you're not getting your protein in, you are missing out on the sustenance of your body, the regeneration of cells, the turnover. So, I mean, I feel sorry for the fruitarians. They've fallen for the propaganda. You cannot possibly, the world's fallen for the propaganda. We've been low fat for 40 years. We've been low salt for 40 years. We've been high carb for 40 years. We haven't got the protein right. And this is just macronutrients, let alone all the chemicals that are added into the food cycle. So that whole thing of 5 a day was purely made up. So that was a meeting 1991, I think 1991, on the Baja Peninsula in California, where there were 44 something well-meaning food producers, including McDonald's and Walmart.
My goodness. That
met with the American Cancer Association to try and work out what diet was going to be beneficial to prevent cancer. And out of that, they realized at the time that having a diet higher in fruit was going to likely prevent cancer. The trouble is, that data that they drew upon was flawed. As it turned out, having a diet higher in fruit and vegetable was associated with better socioeconomic circumstances. So having better socioeconomic circumstances was associated with a lower cancer rate.
Yes.
It wasn't the fruit and veg. So that's then been followed. It got adopted. And that association now, I think, has about 200 food industry companies there behind the whole 5 a day. Fruit is good for you, fruit and veg, that whole concept is actually just all supported by the food industry. But in 20 years down the track, 2011, there was an EPIC study, the European, I forget what EPIC stands for, but it was a 20-year follow-up of, to look at fruit and vegetables in the diet. Hundreds of thousands of people, and it had no effect. Whether or not you're the lowest quartile, the highest quartile, having more fruit and veg in your diet did nothing to cancer. So 20 years after the adoption of the 5 a day concept, the fruit and veg concept, they specifically looked at that 2011, the EPIC study, and it showed no difference. So again, I'm not saying that fruit's bad for you. I'm saying it's not as good for you as it's advertised to be. And it certainly shouldn't form the central part of our diet. And if you do eat fruit, I say eat it fresh, local, seasonal, recognizing that if you're going to eat fruit, it's going to make you hungry. And if you're trying to lose weight, it's going to store it as fat and make you hungrier. So I do have a little bit, I have a few berries, but I have 3 or 4 berries when I have them. I don't have a bowl full, and I have it with double cream, and I have it with nuts. That's my dessert sometimes. You know, I have that. So yes, do I eat fruit? Yes, but I have tiny amounts of it, which I like the taste. Okay, I like the sweetness of the thing, but to me, I'm having 2 or 3 grams of sugar. I'm not having a bowl full of it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But again, I get criticised because everyone says, "Oh, isn't fruit good for you?" And so it's okay if you're an animal trying to get fat for winter, or if you're a human trying to put weight on. Yeah, you might want to eat fruit, but recognise that it is going to be an appetite stimulant.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've myself faced quite a bit of personal struggle in my life because of being pretty much, in spite of being a doctor, not knowing any of these, and being also on a fruit diet at one particular moment of my life when I was told by some dietitian nutritionist that why don't you just go on a fruit diet? And it was one of the most scary moments of my life, because rather than losing weight, I gained weight, and not only did I gain weight, I still remember that feeling of lethargy, that brain fog which used to envelop me. So, well, thank you very much. I am extremely happy with my piece of dark chocolate. I steer clear of fruit all the time. And then that's another question which I'm asked by most of the people, that now then where do we get our fiber from? Now this fiber, because you took it, as you were also discussing about this, so I would be very happy if you could elaborate on the whole, again, this myth of fiber. People are so scared about fiber and of the fact that they're going to go low on fiber.
I'll come back again. The message of low carb, healthy fat, fresh food is science. When you've got to try and work out what's blocking that message. And that's where, as I said, that's where our work's been.
Mm-hmm.
And the processed food industry do not want us to be talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been looking at, this is Belinda's work, and the history of our dietary guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So when you recognise our dietary guidelines started in October 1917 with the formation of the American Dietetics Association.
Mm-hmm.
And when that formed, they started advising the world on how to eat.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote the dietitian books for the next 40 years. All of the Western dietary guidelines were formed as a result of the American Dietetics Association. And that influences World Health Organization, recognizing that India was a British colony through to 1950 something.
Yes, yeah, almost.
Or 49. What was it? Tell me. I'm getting one. I'm
Yeah,
supposed to ask you about the history of India here, okay? So I won't embarrass you, but I know it was around that time. So, your dietary guidelines had very much an influence of the British colonisation.
Yes.
So when you realise that the dietary guidelines were formulated effectively by a religious organisation called the Seventh-day Adventist Church that started the cereal industry of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So John Harvey Kellogg was a Seventh-day Adventist. He invented breakfast cereal, and that's a whole story as to why he did that.
Mm-hmm.
But effectively, in the Midwest of the US, Battle Creek, Michigan, 101 cereal companies were formed around the world, for the world, or for the US, but they've moved right around the world. Mm-hmm. They effectively started writing the dietary guidelines, which were cereal-based. The food pyramid, all that bread, cereal, grain at the bottom.
Mm.
And it's evolved into being cereal-based, anti-meat, and almost vegan vegetarian.
Yes.
So the big selling point of cereal, and we can track that through the whole benefits of cereal, the benefits of fibre, the benefits of having fibre to open your bowels, has all been related to food industry and religious ideology. A clean bowel is a clean soul. It cleanses the sins of the body. So to go to the toilet regularly and open your bowels is beneficial. When it's not. Some people can actually manage very nicely just with one bowel motion a week. Mm-hmm. Some people need to go once or twice a day, but there's no proof that going once a week, twice a week, once a day is of any good or bad. So if we understand that the origins of the benefit of cereal were stemmed from the food industry and the processed food industry, it's being defended right now incredibly hard. And I say that because the cereal industry now, for the world, and I'm throwing in there rice as well, I'm throwing in the wheat, I'm throwing in the quinoa, I'm saying that is actually, because now we've got the cereal industry. We've got them on sugar because it's bad. We've got them on carbohydrate, the science is bad. We've got them on gluten, because gluten's an irritant as well. The last surviving benefit of cereal is fibre. So we're seeing fibre defended. Fibre is good for the gut. The gut microbiome is critical. But the gut microbiome is critical to our health. What goes on in our gut determines what happens in our bloodstream, nutrition, and overall health. But our gut microbiome is purely dependent on what food comes in, what chemicals come in. And yes, sure, fibre is fermented in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
But this is my personal opinion, and I'll probably be disproven in the passage of time, but we'll wait and see. I think the gut microbiome and all the discussion and the science about it and fecal transplants, it can all work. But unless you get the food right, the gut microbiome will revert back to its bad old ways. The bacterial counts will go up. The fermentation, particularly of the sugars, the carbohydrate and the fibre, is detrimental. And so I personally have a low fibre diet. It's not no fibre. I'm not a pure carnivore. I'm an omnivore. You know, I do have my vegetables. They're mostly above ground. I like that variation. Belinda's banned me, because this isn't going out to the entire world, but it is. But she's banned me from putting on my pictures. I said I could put on Instagram and Twitter a picture of what I do in the toilet each day. and I do listen to it. And she said, because that's proof that a low fibre diet's actually still working. And I'm pretty certain it'll get censored on Facebook. Someone will censor it out, but I mean, it could go viral as well. So for me, a low fibre diet isn't terrible. There's a great talk on fibre by Paul Mason on YouTube. I was sitting next. Paul and I were both speaking at the same conference. I gave a talk on diabetes. Paul gave one on fibre. And Paul and I get on the phone quite regularly, and it's often an hour discussion about things which are down some esoteric tunnel. But I said, Paul, that's the talk I wanted to give. Thank you for doing it. I mean, he did it much better than me. But that's, I say, people say about fibre. I say, go and watch Paul Mason's talk on fibre on YouTube. It's well worth it. Fibre, completely overestimated for its benefits.
So true, and leads to so many GI disturbances. I've seen people complaining all the time about bloating, about distension, about acid reflux, and they are shoved with more fiber down their throat. The more they complain of inflammatory bowel disease, of bloating, the more fiber they are fed, and it's such a mess. It's such a mess, and it's become, these guidelines, these misguidelines are actually being shoved down our throat so much that people are so scared of even trying to unlearn and relearn. It's become like they're just dead scared that today for a week, if we try to do something which is a little different from what we've been taught, God knows what's going to happen. But unfortunately, things did happen. And I mean, COVID pandemic hit us like, just like like something from, it was like a blast of lightning from heaven. And that's where we all understood what's the state of our metabolic health. And of course, Dr. Ted Neiman, Professor Noakes, all of them have been speaking about the fact that it's pure and completely the way our metabolic health has gone for a toss, and how vitamin D, how all of this is linked to COVID. I would like to hear your insights about this, that could we have averted, or could we still do something to build up our metabolic health and to prevent further destruction and damage than what's already been done by COVID?
No, absolutely. This is you can improve your metabolic health within 12 hours. I mean, we're seeing the association. I mean, I think the COVID's an interesting one. The people who are dying are elderly and frail. The ones that are getting sick and chewing up the medical resources are the ones who are metabolically unwell. And I'll be harsh. Most of them are obese. They've got metabolic syndrome. Their blood pressure's up. They've got pre-diabetes. And I think a big problem in the world, particularly the Western world, is that they're medicated.
Yes.
So it appears to be that the coronavirus gets into the cell via the ACE receptor. And the ACE receptor is, ACE inhibitors are one of the most commonly used drugs in hypertension. So if we've got a population that are metabolically unwell and with hypertension, and they're on an ACE inhibitor, all of a sudden we're letting the virus in. The other thing which has been associated is those with lower cholesterol levels seem to do poorer. And we've got this same metabolically unwell group of people, particularly in the US and the UK, who are on statins to lower their cholesterol. So metabolically unwell and being treated with an ACE inhibitor and a statin to lower your blood, you've created a perfect storm. And that's the group that are getting sick and chewing up medical resources. You know, they're not dying because you know, the health system around the world is spending billions of dollars keeping them alive. Now, can you improve your metabolic health? Absolutely. You can actually improve your diabetes. And this is one of the things I've gotten into trouble for. I say you can put your type 2 diabetes into remission. You can reverse your pre-diabetes within 12 hours, probably 6 hours, okay? Because diabetes is the inability to manage the glucose load that you present your body with. And if you can manage, so therefore, if you don't eat carbohydrate this afternoon, tonight, all of a sudden you've taken your diabetes into control. Absolutely. Your blood glucose will not jump up and down. Sure, there's a potential for small, you know, minor variations, but you can actually improve your blood glucose control straight away. Absolutely. Now, back to that metabolic thing about alcohol, if you reduce your blood glucose, you improve your T cell function. If you don't produce alcohol as a byproduct of excess glucose intake and fructose metabolism, you improve your immunity, you improve your T cell function. So if you know that the coronavirus is in town, you can improve your immunity today. You can improve your chances over your next door neighbour. And all it means is just going low carb today. So that's it. That's as simple as it.
It's just so simple, and it's just caused such rampant destruction. And this simple message has not been allowed to you know, propagate, that all you need to do is to go low carb, build up your cholesterols, your levels, your LDL, and take vitamin D, which is just such a basic information has. And now when we talk about cholesterol, I'm so happy you brought up this topic, because there are a lot of questions which are also posted here, and also we are, I think, seeing them on Twitter every single day, is this whole myth about the cholesterol and the LDL, and the fact that people are extremely scared that the moment they go on a low carb, I won't even call it a high fat, I will call it a balanced diet, the LDL goes up, and then they go to the doctor, the doctor says, oh, well, you are doing good, you're looking good, you've lost weight, but what about your LDL, what about the cholesterol? I think you need a statin. So I think this is something you need to address more in detail.
I'll drift back to a comment about vitamin D. I think vitamin D is an interesting one. We've had, again, for 40 years, we've had a low-fat diet for a society. And if you don't hit fat in your diet, then you can't absorb your fat-soluble vitamins, which are vitamin A, D, E, and K. And D and K, particularly K2, are so important with our bone health and our immune system. We've also told people to get out of the sun, avoid the sunlight, so I think that, and all of that's you can turn that around by having pasture-fed meats, dairy, eggs, and getting those healthy fats into the system. The ghee, all of that's perfectly healthy. That allows us to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins and us to metabolize them. I think vitamin D is interesting because we talk about vitamin D supplements. I actually think vitamin D is a measure of how much sunlight we've exposed to and how much healthy fat we've got in our diet. So I actually think it's a surrogate marker. We measure vitamin D. So if I see someone's vitamin D level is low, I actually don't, they go on a supplement anyway because the general practitioners organised it. But I say to them, you can get your vitamin D level up by putting healthy fats into your diet and getting out in the sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
And the safe sunlight is when the shadow is longer than your height. So morning sun, afternoon sun is perfect for our vitamin D generation in tissue. That peak sun, has got more, UV radiation in it, but we should be out there getting more sunlight. So that's vitamin D. The very first question when I'm asked about, what happens with the person's cholesterol and the LDL, and it's always, oh, what's going to happen to the cholesterol? I ask, so what's cholesterol?
Yes.
I just say straight back, it doesn't matter if it's a patient of mine, it's a friend of mine, and particularly if it's a doctor. I say, you're worried about the cholesterol. What is cholesterol?
What is cholesterol?
99% of doctors cannot give me an answer. Okay? So we have this enormous amount of fear-mongering about what cholesterol is, when 99% of doctors cannot give me an answer to that. And the moment they can't give me an answer, I've pulled the rug out from underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
And they shut up. I said, if you can't tell me what cholesterol is, then you're out. We're not going any further.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm feeling generous, and I know this is very arrogant when I say that, okay, well, if I'm feeling generous and I've got time, I'll then tell them what cholesterol is. In that it's a major structural, it's actually an alcohol. It's actually the major structural component of our cell membranes, our mitochondrial membranes, the engines of our body.
Absolutely.
It's the precursor for multiple hormones in the body, including our sex hormones, the corticosteroids, and vitamin D synthesis.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the major thing which we need to make bile acids so we can actually digest our food and the fat in it.
Yes.
What's happened to the rate of gallstones and cholecystectomy in India? Is that high?
Oh, yes. Very high. And because my primary subject is that I am a radiologist, and I'm still pursuing my radiology, we are seeing so much of a high incidence of not well distended gallbladders with some amount of sludge, of course, always associated with fatty liver. Again, it's so scary to see fatty livers, not well distended gallbladders, and minimal sludge in it present even in 20 years old. It's just so scary. And of course, yes, they'll be on a fat-free diet. It is full of fruit and muesli and granola.
Without fat. So fat often gets blamed for gallstones.
Yes, absolutely.
When in fact the cause of it is actually not having enough fat in your diet. So when you eat fat, the gallbladder gets all the bile salts, puts them there together, so then when you eat food, it squeezes it out.
Absolutely.
If you don't eat any fat, it just dries up, just like a creek bed will dry up, and they become little pebbles.
Absolutely.
And then the next time you have a big fatty meal, it can't get out. You get inflammation, infection, it becomes cholecystitis, and then everyone says, oh, the fat caused the problem. No, the fat meant not having fat in your diet is the cause of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that cholesterol aspect of it. So the very first thing I say, if you don't know what cholesterol is, don't enter the discussion here. And then we know that contrary to popular belief, that having a high level of cholesterol is associated with longer survival, lower rates of diabetes, lower rates of dementia, lower rates of Parkinson's disease, and lower rates of cancer. Having a lower cholesterol is associated with higher rates of diabetes, higher rates of dementia, and cancer. And it makes sense because cholesterol is so critical to our development. I also say, as far as I can work out, the only benefit of statins is in literature is that if you're male over the age of 50 and you've had a heart attack, then it will decrease your rate of dying of another heart attack by 0.3%. It's not it's advertised as it will decrease. Patients tell me all the time, oh, my doctor tells me this will decrease my risk of dying by 30%. I said, no, it's 0.3% on 1.1%. And it was in males over the age of 50. So I say to women, why are you on a statin? It's never been proven to be beneficial. It gets me into trouble, I realise that. But if you can't argue what the cholesterol is, let's not even go down the LDL pathway.
Absolutely.
Okay. But if we do go down the LDL pathway, that's a description. The LDL is a description of the low-dense lipoproteins. It's a spectrum of particles.
Mm-hmm.
There are very small ones called the small dense LDLs, and you've got the bigger ones, which are the ones that transport fat around the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually okay for your big, fluffy LDLs to increase on a low-carb diet because you're just moving fat around.
Mm-hmm.
What you don't want to increase is the small dense LDLs. And even they're not that trouble unless they get oxidized. They're more likely to get oxidized if you're having polyunsaturated oils.
Yes.
So small dense LDLs are part of the production of fructose. That's a byproduct of storage of fructose. They get converted into small dense LDLs.
Mm-hmm.
I call them the Goldilocks size. They're just the right or the wrong size to get into the blood vessel walls. They create the trouble. If they're oxidized, they become pain, it becomes inflamed, and that's where you end up with your chronic inflammation.
Yes.
So the other thing is about the pure number of an LDL. When it comes up on a scoring, it's actually not a measure of the number of particles. It's actually measured, it's part of a subtraction equation with a coefficient in there. It's not actually on a standard lipid profile. It's actually not a number. It's a made up number based on cholesterol, other particles, and it's subtracted, and it's just a number. So it is ignorance. And again, I'm being strong with my words. It's ignorance of the health professionals to dwell upon cholesterol and LDL total. The American Cardiology Association in 2018 said they should abandon the LDL particle as a measurement. No, not me, the American Cardiology Association.
Yes.
If we're really going to take it seriously, there's actually only one test to do. Forget ratios, triglycerides are an indirect measure. Only one test to do is a thing called a lipid subfraction analysis. It is available. It's available. I know it's available in India because I know people who have had it done. And it's a test which looks at the overall number of particles: small dense LDL, large LDL, HDL, the medium density lipoproteins. It measures cholesterol. It looks at the whole spectrum. And that's what you want. You want the whole picture. So current studies on cardiovascular disease out of the Mayo Clinic are only measuring, well, they're measuring a spectrum of things, but they're measuring lipid subfraction analyses because it's looking at the whole picture rather than part of the picture. And certainly the LDL is just a number made up based on a coefficient and a subtraction equation. So when people worry about it, I say, well, tell me about cholesterol, tell me about LDL. What do you understand by the test? And if you don't know what cholesterol is, and you don't know what the test is, then stop worrying about it. Nobody's ever died from cholesterol.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Nobody's ever died from a ratio. They die from the consequences of a poor diet, which actually sets up chronic inflammation, of which the testing is crude and barbaric. And cholesterol was first measured in the 1920s because it was a test that could be done. Cholesterol was blamed for cardiovascular disease because when they looked down the microscope, they saw plaques that had cholesterol in it. And you will have heard that term, just because you've got firemen at a fire doesn't mean that you should blame the firemen as part of a cleanup mechanism. And the last thing you should do is take funding away from your fire brigade. Why reduce the number of firemen in the body? Why reduce cholesterol when it's so critical to our health? And it's all association data, and it's poor association data, and it hasn't been able to be reviewed independently. The Oxford trial, nobody's been able to get hold of that raw data because it was supplied and funded by the pharmaceutical industry. But when we talk about statins being trouble, and there may be a role for a certain number of people to be on a statin, but we've got to work out that small number rather than just giving it to the whole mass of people based on numbers and tests which the doctors ordering don't understand. And that scares the the willies out of me. I was trying to think of a correct word, and it just really scares me that the medical profession just have not got their head around this, because it's the biochemistry, it's not the politics. Because you come back to the biochemistry, it's just basic stuff. I can understand. I'm an orthopaedic surgeon. If I can understand biochemistry, it means every doctor can do it.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. And it's just, I'm just feeling such severe frustration and helplessness, because can you even imagine that a whole, most of the diseases, whether you start from just a feeling of being unwell, to cancer, to diabetes, to Parkinson's, to children having anomalies, to ADHD, to autism, to everything is just being linked, because, oh my goodness, it's just, I don't know, I'm at a loss for words, and I'm just feeling so helpless, because it's such a simple thing. It's such a simple thing. It's really not rocket science. And unfortunately, in India, I don't know how it is in Australia or how it is in US, but in India, somehow it's the laymen, it's the general population, it's some people who are, following people like you, who are able to grasp, understand, put it to some use in their lives and bring about a change. But unfortunately, I'm seeing that doctors are just not willing to unlearn and relearn. What is the underlying issue? I don't know. But coming from a family of doctors, being surrounded by doctors, all my friends being doctors, I have been unable to bring about a change to their lifestyles, to their thinking. Though I have been pretty much irresponsible of trying to of bringing about a change in people who are non-medicos. People have been really benefited, but the doctors are just not willing to even give a try. All I say, just maybe you could look into it.
I did it again. I like my talks are on YouTube. People say, "Look, can you give that talk?" I say, "No, it's on YouTube."
Mm.
Last year, I gave a talk called "The Failure of Medical Education."
Yes, absolutely. It's a wonderful talk.
And because the science, as I say, is incontrovertible. So what my question is, why are doctors not listening?
Yes.
Why is the government not listening?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we not just taking this on board wholeheartedly?
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, what is blocking the message?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really simple. It's our medical education. So you're a doctor, I'm a doctor. Majority of doctors have been educated on what they call read, repeat, reward. Read the book, repeat it in the exam. Here's your medical degree. Go out and make some money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's critical, but that's what it is. Doctor in Latin is to teach. It's not to care for, it's not to make money, it's to teach. You get a doctorate, you're a teacher. And in medicine, we don't do that. We become medicators, we become surgeons, we treat, we mend, we don't actually teach. We like to think we teach, but we don't. So going back in history, and again, history is fascinating. In 1910, in the US, there was a thing called the Flexner Report, which was put together by John D. Rockefeller of oil and Andrew Carnegie of steel. They commissioned it. And effectively, that changed medical education in the US. It ended up closing about 50 medical schools in the United States and Canada. And the educational model then became to manage and to treat, and prevention was put on the wayside. I know we talk about prevention, we all get educated, prevention's critical, but nobody ever gets taught how to prevent.
I totally agree.
And so therefore, we became very good at managing and treating the problems once they became, because that's the birth of the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
It's the ongoing issue of surgeons. The vast majority of cases I operate on, or patients, have got a metabolic problem 30 or 40 years ago. That's now creeping up on them. And now we've got obesity and diabetes creeping into that equation and changing. The patient's joints are wearing out. Guess what? Osteoarthritis is an inflammation-related disease which is made worse by insulin. Fabulous paper that came out of China earlier this year looking at the role of insulin and inflammation. It's just there. So I saw a fellow today, 134 kilos. And I saw him 3 months ago and I said, you've got to lose weight. You've got to go low carb. He's got worn out joints. And he came back to see me today. He's lost 1 kilogram in weight in the last 3 months, but he's gone low carb, keto. He's trying really hard. He's lost 1 kilogram, but in the last 3 months, he's lost all of his pain. So that's what I'm on about. If you reduce the inflammation, then you improve your health. Now that comes next. Following on from that, then you lose weight. So the body's got to heal itself before it does a lot of weight loss. Some people lose weight very rapidly, low carb, keto. Another group of people improve their health first of all. And I say, if you've been unwell for a long time, if you've been unwell for 20 or 30 years, your body's got to heal itself first of all. And it's going to store fat and it's going to maintain your weight. But you're going to, and so I'm not fussed by that. And so this guy today was a classic example. And his wife said, look, he's trying really hard. And I said, you actually look better. He'd lost the pain in his face. And I said, look, your joints are worn out. We can do this operation. We can do this one. And come back and see me in 6 months' time and we'll talk about it. That patient, if he hadn't seen one of my colleagues, might have already had 2 or 3 operations. So I'm talking my patients out of surgery. But when they do need their surgery, they get better quicker. They're in hospital. Anecdotally, very hard to prove, they've actually got less pain.
Yes.
And so the whole low carb keto thing is actually associated with better pain relief.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I quite agree with you because a lot of my patients have also seen a betterment in their life quality. Their sleep apnea is gone. They're feeling better. And then slowly and steadily, I think the weight loss does come in. And unfortunately, that's where somehow people again, enter this whole problem of going on a hypocaloric diet. And that's another huge issue where everybody has been told since centuries that you have to exercise more, eat less. So for them to have a concept of the fact that we're not talking about calories in, calories out. We're just talking about eating low carb. Low carb is not equal to the calorie in, calorie out concept is another huge stumbling block, which I do face. And what would you like to say about that, about this whole?
The other thing, just going back to the doctors on the whole do not want to admit that they got it wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's an enormous embarrassment. I've got, when I realized I got it wrong, I actually went, okay, I got it wrong. I'm going to move on from here now. And it's incredibly refreshing to actually admit that you made a mistake.
Absolutely.
We have children. Do you have children?
Yeah.
If you tell your children that was wrong.
Yeah.
Admit what you did. You made a mistake, and let's all move on. That's called parenting.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We educate our children. Okay, and children muck up all the time. I was not an angelic child. I'm still not an angelic adult. Just ask Belinda. But if you're wrong, admit you made a mistake, and we move on.
Yes.
And it's very refreshing. The longer you harbour guilt, the longer you harbour the fact that you've done something wrong, the more it will chew yourself up. That's a spiritual thing. And the doctors, I mentor quite a few people in this space. I caught up with someone, he's an emergency department physician, and he was telling me, he is now what I call in the angry phase. He's realised that he got it wrong. And now he wants to he's improved his own health, he wants to make amends for that. I can tell you, I used to be the chocolate cake judge. I used to be the cake judge at the hospital. All right, for 10 years, I would judge the best cakes in the hospital. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I'm now trying to make amends.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're a doctor and you realise you've made that mistake, and I've had a retired doctor come and visit me here in Tasmania to say, look, I just realised my entire lifetime of medicine, I got it wrong, and I want to make a difference now. So he now lectures around Victoria in Australia, state of Australia, to retired people. Every week he goes around to try and undo his lifetime of bad advice. And I totally respect him for that. So doctors don't like to, they got it wrong. Okay, that's the first thing. And so that's a huge stumbling block. But when you do, then you can move on.
Yes.
I've got a couple of anaesthetist friends who are of Indian origin. They live here in Australia. They, as a family, have reversed their health, their obesity, their weights. Their Indian parents are looking for, who still live in India, I think in Mumbai. They're treating them by Skype each week. So it is difficult in India to go low carb. There's a lot of distractions, a lot of rice, a lot of the breads, the food. You're surrounded by carbs. But again, once we admit we've made a mistake, let's all move on. But the trouble is, medical profession hate it. They hate admitting they got it wrong.
Yes, I've really seen that. And in spite of being a medico, again, belonging to a family of, everybody in my family from both sides are medicos. I got it terribly wrong. I didn't even get it wrong for me. I got it wrong for my daughter, who is actually in Australia. She's studying in Adelaide, and she reversed. Luckily, I got it right, and I apologized to her with all my heart that, I just got it wrong with you as well. And she reversed her PCOD, she lost her weight, and she's currently actually doing better than me because she's really got it all right. And I think she's also here on the show, and she's your huge fan. But it's just, yes, I completely agree that you have to accept and move on. You can't just cling on to your ego, your arrogance, your whatever. You have to move on, because unfortunately the non-medical people who are now getting it right and reversing their issues are then getting this terrible rage against the medical industry. And then it's like all the doctor fraternity is being blamed for whatever is being done, and there is this kind of distrust, this kind of all sorts of really distrust which is happening with the doctors. And that's one reason I'm trying to urge all the doctors as well, that at least try to understand the biochemistry. If I, being a radiologist, could understand that, oh my goodness, it also hit me like a thunderbolt that, oh my God, I just got it wrong all my life, and I struggled against metabolic ill health so long.
Not only do you have to admit that you've gotten it wrong, you have to admit that you're actually doing harm to your patient.
Absolutely.
And we as doctors do not go into medicine to do harm.
Yes.
And so it becomes, not only did I get it wrong, it becomes guilt.
Yes.
It's very, very hard to admit all of that. Yes. Like you, we've apologized to our children.
Yes.
So we're sorry we got that wrong. Yes. But our grandchildren, our daughter has run low carb in her 2 pregnancies, and our grandchildren are fit and healthy, low carb kids. They're not zero carbs, they're not keto kids, but they're good, they're healthy. Mm-hmm. And so I have hope for their future.
Yes.
You had a second part to that. So I went back to doctors because I think it's really critical to understand why doctors have gotten it wrong. Mm-hmm. Because it's our education. You've got to question your teachers and their teachers before them. You've got to question our textbooks, which have actually been largely written with funding from the pharmaceutical industry. Harrison's textbook of internal medicine, the classic textbook that I was raised on, the authors of that received, the editors, received, I think, $12 million US in 2017. Mm-hmm. That's just wrong. If you're receiving funding from the pharmaceutical industry, the American dietary guidelines are being rewritten at the moment. And it's completely full of industry-sponsored experts. It's just wrong. There's not independent thought in there. It's just biased opinion is shaping our dietary guidelines, shaping our medical textbooks. And it's really hard to question all of that, because you've got guidelines. And if you don't follow the guidelines, and the guidelines have been written by vested interests, if you don't follow the guidelines, then you get into trouble with your medical board.
Yes.
That's what happened to me. And
yes.
it got to the point, really, I said, ultimately, my stand was, if I'm that dangerous, deregister me.
Yes.
And if you don't deregister me, then I'm actually right. I can't be both. I can't be safe and talking low carb. I can't be dangerous and low carb. I'm either dangerous, so take away my medical license. Just take it away because I'm dangerous. But ultimately, when the vested interests were taken out and the cereal industry had come after me, as it turned out, and so we've got all those documents where the cereal industry, and we're talking about the big people called in Australia Sanitarium, Nestle, Kellogg's, the CEOs, I was labelled for targeting as the only doctor in Australia for targeting. So they came after me. They involved a union called the Dietitians Association here in Australia. Yes. They put pressure on my hospital. Ended up being reported. The expert witness was working for the cereal industry. So ultimately, I'm a thorn in their side. But ultimately, when it came down to full scrutiny, I'm not dangerous. I'm talking about preventative health measures, and I'm talking about doing it without drugs. Yes. And I had to get off, as did Tim Noakes in his case in South Africa. We had to win. Not only were we right, and again, that's an arrogant statement, not only were we right, we had to win and we had to persevere. Because if we didn't persevere, then you would struggle to speak up.
Yes, yes, so true.
And the very first person that Belinda and I contacted after that I was cleared was Tim Noakes. I still remember Tim. Tim's become a very good friend, dear friend. And I can still remember just him. He was having morning tea, having a cuppa in a cafeteria in Cape Town, and we Skyped each other and said, "Hey Tim, guess what? I'm off." And he grinned from ear to ear, because it meant so much for us and our families, but it also meant so much for the low carb community. And neither of us, I think, could have gotten off our charges without the support of the wider world community.
Yes.
Tim's case was an open court case. Mine was in a star chamber behind closed doors. Exactly the same things were transpiring. But it was social media. It was the community. It was, not just Australia, South Africa. It was England. It was the US. It was India. It was Indonesia. Last year, I went and spoke in Indonesia. 350,000 Indonesians had given up sugar and carbs in the previous 2 years.
Oh my goodness!
Amazing, amazing scenario. So, Tim and I will still openly thank the World Low Carb community for helping us, because we couldn't have done it just by ourselves.
I think, I would say that all of us thank you all from the bottom of our heart for making us feel well. It's just such a magical feeling of waking up every morning and feeling well, not having that brain fog, not having joint aches and pains, just feeling well. And it's just an amazing feeling, because unfortunately that's what we all are seeing, that the health span is reducing, the lifespan is going up, and people are perpetually sick, perpetually on medications, and leading such an unproductive life. So we have to actually thank all of you. I thank Professor Noakes, you, Amy, Dr. Ted Neiman, all of us. And I'm really trying to get everybody as much as possible for a live webinar with me. I will be recording all of this and posting on my YouTube. And I'm doing it completely independently. It's just my payback time to the society and to the fact that for years I didn't know. And I suffered, my older daughter suffered, so many other people suffered, my parents suffered, only because we didn't know. We didn't know. And if we had known, things would have been better. But I'm trying to, like, I'm definitely trying to do something on pregnancy and correct nutrition, because again, that's one thing which scares me. And now that you elaborated straight from the 2-cell embryo, it's just, planted that thought in my mind that I have to, spread this word around as well.
I mean, again, I'm an orthopaedic surgeon, but a few months ago, I delved into pregnancy. It's only a little talk. It's on YouTube, but I felt very strongly about it. Our daughter, early in the pregnancy, had a lot of vomiting, nausea, vomiting, and she was, worried, like many mothers are, of having all that nausea and vomiting and being unable to eat. And it made me think about what is that state. So if you can't eat for a long period of time, it's called ketosis. And it's fasting. It's forced because of all the nausea and vomiting of pregnancy. So it made me look at the results, because I thought, here's the best trial you can ever do. You'd never get it past an ethics committee, okay?
True.
But let's put women into ketosis and test babies that are growing. All right? I mean, you couldn't do it. You couldn't do that as a study. And see what happens to birth rates and deformities and learning potential. So what I thought is, actually, we've already done the test. We've already done that study. It's been studied tens of thousands of times in the literature. And it's happened to millions and millions and millions of women. That in that first trimester of pregnancy, where they get a lot of nausea and vomiting, and they can't eat properly, and they're fasting effectively, that's the most critical time in a child's development, isn't it? First trimester of pregnancy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I thought, hang on, this is actually a test of ketosis. This is the greatest trial of ketosis of all time. We're testing pregnant women on the first trimester of pregnancy. So, as it turns out, the more severe your nausea and vomiting of early pregnancy, more likely that you're spending dramatic amounts of time in ketosis. Then the results are, you're more likely to go through to term in pregnancy. You have less delivery complications. The child is more likely to end up with normal birth weight. They have lower rates of deformity, and particularly those associated with congenital abnormalities like the heart. They are more likely to have better mental health and well-being in their infancy. So we've got the study. It's already been done. Tens of thousands of patients, or women, have been looked at with nausea and vomiting in pregnancy. The opposite is poor blood glucose control, which is diabetes.
Yes.
So gestational diabetes, guess what, has also been studied in tens of thousands of women. So if you have gestational diabetes, and the more severe it is, and the earlier it is in pregnancy, like type 1 diabetes, you have less likely to go through to full term. You're more likely to have high and low birth weight babies. You're more likely to have congenital abnormalities, particularly those associated with cardiovascular disease. And those children are sicker and have poorer learning ability. So we've already tested nutritional ketosis. We've already tested ketosis in the biggest population, most susceptible, and the most vulnerable group, which is a growing baby in the first term.
Yes.
Now, that created a bit of controversy. It's only 10 or 11 minutes. I just looked at the studies, looking at tens of thousands of results. And I think Gary Fettke YouTube pregnancy, that'll find it, but it's there. Okay. But again, it hasn't been seen that many times. But I think it's reassuring to a mother who's pregnant and throwing up, vomiting, that actually this is actually looking after my baby. And I think it's nature's way. I mean,
Yes.
the baby's development of the brain is development on ketones. Glucose does not get converted to brain development.
Mm-hmm.
Protein gets converted to tissue development.
Mm-hmm.
Fats and ketones are converted to our tissue development and
Mm-hmm.
our brain development. Carbohydrate does not get converted to anything apart from a bit of fat within the baby. The our tissues, if you think about a cell, it's got fat in it, it's got proteins,
Mm-hmm.
and the carbohydrates are only used as energy.
Mm-hmm.
So what does a baby need to grow? It needs fats and proteins.
And proteins.
And so it can source those from the mother, and in
Mm-hmm.
a state of starvation or ketosis,
Mm-hmm.
the mother produces ketones, which is exactly what the baby requires, and a small amount of glucose for erythrocytes, but so therefore ketosis appears to be not only protective, but actually we thrive in that environment, and we can't test it any more than doing it on pregnant women. Now I think it's it was interesting when I posted that up. There were some obstetricians that said, "Oh my God, I hadn't realised that." And there were some obstetricians saying that I shouldn't be talking about it. And I said, I'm not talking about it. I'm only looking at the data, which we already have.
Hmm.
And it's there in the obstetric literature.
Absolutely.
And all I did was summarise it down. I think it's, it has, I say, it hasn't been seen by that many people. I think it's one of my most important talks when you just put
I am.
data together.
Yes, I would be listening to that today. Absolutely, because that's actually makes so much of sense, because there's that one crucial period where everybody tends to have some sort of nausea, vomiting, and throwing up episodes. And well, it definitely might be nature's way of saying that the baby needs to be in ketosis for that particular moment of time. And whereas we uh, completely go into a stressful mode, and we also try to treat it as well by various means. Uh, I mean, really, it is so interesting, and I'm definitely going to go back and
The other thing is that with women, they might be eating badly early in their pregnancy, when they get pregnant. And I think this is nature's way of saying, whoa, hang on, get rid of the toxins out of your body.
Hmm.
If you're going to eat really lousy food, I'm going to make you so sick that you can't even eat it because the body's deciding. I mean, again, I can never prove that. It's purely a theory based on observational data. It's the first step in science. The first step in science is to make an observation.
Yes.
Then you come up with your hypothesis and you try and prove and disprove it. And all I've done is make an observation. Nausea and vomiting in pregnancy, the more severe it is, the better the baby's outcome. That's all. That's the observation. However, the explanation of it might be that nutritional ketosis is in fact the most optimal state of well-being for the development of the baby.
For the baby at that time. Well, yes, yes, I'm sure that completely makes so much of sense. And I'm definitely going to also look into this. And it's so interesting, that it's basically it's all the harmony between nature and between how we are supposed to be. And because we have been completely now moved into a state of disharmony with nature, whether it's the external environment or the internal environment, that's the reason we are facing what we are facing currently. That is the whole world has come to a shutdown only thanks to this complete state of disharmony. I mean, it's just so tragic. It's just so tragic. I think we've covered quite some topics today, and it's been an eye opener. But I think my daughter has posted a very pertinent question here, because she is in Australia currently, and she says that now there's the other thing which is now hitting is the whole vegan concept. And I'm, as long as I respect everybody out there who's a vegan, and as long as you are doing it for spiritual reasons, for animal welfare, that's fine. But what would you like to say for the people who are doing it for health reasons?
Well, again, there's a big difference between Western vegetarianism and Eastern vegetarianism.
Mm-hmm.
And veganism is very much about Western vegetarianism.
Mm-hmm.
And its origins are related to one church group,
Mm-hmm.
which is the Seventh-day Adventist church group, who
Mm-hmm.
believe in veganism because that will become pure to the soul, and the more people that can get converted to veganism, then Christ will return. Now, all this seems a bit far-fetched. However, this is my wife's work, and when
Yes.
you realise, and it's actually been acknowledged in 2018 by the Adventist Church. There's an article in the journal called Religion acknowledging everything that I'm about to say, and in the references is Belinda's work. So they're actually even acknowledging that she's a world expert on it. She knows more about their history.
Yeah.
So when you realise that the Seventh-day Adventist Church owns or originated the cereal industry of the world, the soy industry, and the fake meat industry, the alternate meat industry, all originally started by Kellogg's.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
sorry, cereal and alternate meats by Kellogg's, John Haverkin, and the soy industry by a fellow named Harry China Miller. And he brought soy to the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
And they've still got soy factories and farms in China. So literally, when you realise that the Adventist Church, cereal, soy, fake meat,
Mm-hmm.
there's a few big vested interests in there. They are also, they have a lot of money behind them. They're also the second biggest educator in the world after the Catholic Church.
Mm.
And they have developed the guidelines. So if you are practicing veganism
Mm-hmm.
in the Western world,
Mm-hmm.
and arguably the whole world, you're actually working for the processed food industry and the Adventist Church.
Yes.
So every one of the vegan arguments, whether or not it's about soil, whether or not it's about animal welfare, whether or not it's about the amount of water that's being used in meat production, whether or not it's about health, it is complete propaganda that I'm quite happy, one by one, to debunk the myths associated with it. You cannot get all of your micronutrients, you cannot get your macronutrients, cannot get your amino acids from a vegan dietary intake. You will be deficient somewhere along the line. It will either show up early or it'll show up late. A vegan diet is not sustainable long term without significant supplementation. And arguably, even supplementation doesn't do it. So there are many, 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 many stories on the internet of failed vegans.
Yes.
And I understand that people may believe that they don't want to, kill a big cow, with big brown eyes and eat meat. However, there are more living organisms in 1 tablespoon of dirt whose lives are destroyed by cereal cropping.
Yes.
There are human beings on the planet. I've done the count. I've done the calculations. 1 tablespoon of dirt has between 7 and 10 billion living creatures in it. And so therefore, every time you turn the soil over in crop production, in cereal, vegetable, grain, it is in fact destroying the lives of more living creatures than there are humans on the planet.
Yes.
We have the ability to actually turn our grasslands, which are not croppable, into ruminants fodder. There's so much propaganda out there, which is what I call disinformation. It's deliberate misinformation.
Yes.
It's deliberate. And it's there to promote and protect the processed food industry. And I'm sorry for the vegans, the young people who are honestly believing, and they're well-intentioned, but if one by one, every one of those arguments, it actually falls over. However, you've got movies which are very emotive, pointing it out, and you've got a vulnerable group of population who are looking for identity. And so with identity, that people, young people actually search for identity in a group to
Yes.
belong to, and veganism's giving that answer.
Yes.
And it is a powerful movement, and they've got their anger against society, but it is propaganda, which is actually false, and it comes from one group, and it's the processed food industry, and the number one group behind that propaganda is a vegan religious organisation, and it's scary. Yeah, and that group is actually manipulating the dietary guidelines of the world, are very highly placed within the US government, within the World Health Organization, United Nations, in our communities here. They're actually pushing into India, they're
Yes.
pushing into China, they're
Yes.
pushing into... and I know that sounds like a conspiracy, but everything I've just said has been acknowledged by them over and over. And so the whole vegan movement, it's massive, but it's actually not probably as big as they make it out to be. They just keep saying that they're massive, but you can't sustain yourself on veganism. Your health will suffer, and it's just a matter of time.
But it
And
might be just too late by the time people realize it's just might be too late.
yeah, I can't. We've got some personal family things there, which I'm not going to discuss, but I've seen the damage that can occur.
Yes.
And it's tragic, and it's sad, and it's preventable.
Yes.
And and I might sound angry about it. I'm not angry. I'm passionate about it, because you just, the future of our world is our children.
Yes.
The health. I mean, here's something I talk about all the time. The health of society is the wealth of society is determined by the health of
Health
the
of
people.
our children. I
The
agree.
health of the people is determined by the health of the food. The health of this food is determined by the health of our soil. And unless we understand that whole circle of life, we're in trouble. And as you say, it's become disconnected.
Yes. Yes.
Let's look to our local food sources. Let's support our local farmers.
Absolutely.
And that's...
Absolutely. I tell that to all my patients and friends all the time, that for instance in India we broccoli, zucchini, all of these things are not really that widely available. We have our local we have our bottle gourd, we have our bitter gourd, we have our lady finger, we have pumpkin, we have so much to eat. So that's what I also keep telling them: eat local. Even if you're a vegetarian, eat a good full fat dairy, eat your ghee, eat your full fat curd, drink, and you're good to go. You might not be on a authentic keto, you guys not you may not be very low on carbs, but yet if you could add a bit of some strength training, and you could add intermittent fasting, you could be a vegetarian on a low carb and do really well. Just reverse your most of your lifestyle diseases. So I that's exactly the kind of message I'm really looking into spreading. And it's a dream. This whole project was on my mind right since the lockdown started, that I have to start connecting with people. And for me, I think that the lockdown converted into quite a blessing, because in a way I got more time. I could conceptualize and put this into picture. And I would definitely like to introduce you to, I don't know whether he is currently online or not, but Pratik Golecha is a very close friend and a friend of mine, who's the technical wizard who's behind getting this whole webinars, ultimately, to getting this whole dream project online. And I'm trying to get as many of you on board to spread this word, because India really needs, because we have this population explosion. We have so many people below the poverty line. We just need, and the people below the poverty line are trying to look towards us for the kind of food we are eating, and they are also moving into junk and processed food. Whereas once upon a time, our villages were the ones which had good health. Actually they were poor, but they were healthy. They are all moving into processed food.
Absolutely. I went to Cape Town a few years ago, and we went to one of the settlements, which is one of the very poor areas. And I was talking about this just on the weekend. There was an open market. In the open market, they were selling offal, lungs and heart and kidneys and goat's heads, which are energy dense, nutrient dense food. But the tragic thing is the only signage, only advertising signage was Coca-Cola.
Oh my God.
The red and white was just out, it was just complete signage with Coca-Cola. And so this is just corporate sponsorship. You touch base about, exercise more, eat less, that term exercise is medicine. When you track it back, it's patented to Coca-Cola.
Oh my goodness.
So that whole concept of calories in, calories out, exercise more, eat less, is all, again, this is all in history. We can track it all back to Coca-Cola. We can track the Centre of Disease Control. We can, the CDC started with Coca-Cola funding. We can track the food industry. And so this is the barriers we're up against. We're not up against science. We're not up against common sense. We're not up against real food. And we are up against a history of entrenched propaganda from the processed food industry.
Absolutely.
And whether or not it's a conspiracy or they're complicit, I like the term complicit. They've positioned themselves nicely into what's already the guidelines which have been around for over 100 years.
Yes.
Their business models are related to it. They will protect their billion-dollar industries at the expense of coming after us as individuals. And so supporting you in a talk like this is critical because it's not in mainstream social media. We can't be censored out by Facebook or by Twitter or Instagram or whatever the next platform will be. It's not going via the mainstream media channels, which depend on advertising dollars from the corporates.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, if you put this online, and it may only be heard by one person or 100 or 1,000, I don't know. But ultimately it's there, and it's there as a repository of information. People might come back in a year or 5 years or 10 years ago. Oh, these guys, Pallavi and Gary, were talking about this.
Yes.
We don't know how far that reaches.
Yes, I agree completely.
But going back, I did not know when I fixed Ricky Ponting's elbow that he was going to be, running out Tendulkar and the co, So you don't know the repercussions. All that you and I are doing is we're planting a seed in the community.
Yes.
And if we water it and feed it, it may grow.
Absolutely.
But unless we have this conversation, unless we plant this seed, our children don't have any hope.
Yes.
And that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing it. That's why you're doing it. It's not, I've got nothing to gain. This has only cost me time, a lot of money, and fighting in courts and that sort of thing.
Yes.
This is about making a difference long term.
Yes, I completely agree. Completely agree. It's exactly, this is exactly why I wanted to do this, is to just, as you said, that even if I'm able to make a difference in one person's life, even if one person becomes, listens to this, what we are talking about, and decides to become healthy, take on the healthy lifestyle, to reverse their various lifestyle diseases, it's I have done my job. I have done my bit for the society.
Well, I mean, if I didn't start this journey, I would not be having this conversation with you now.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Skype, Zoom, all of that's allowing us to all communicate.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, that's all we can do.
Absolutely.
I thought I was down, I was going down this pathway, and I couldn't find anyone who was talking to me or thinking that it was reasonable. And ended up meeting up in a lounge room in Melbourne, in Victoria, Australia, with Rod Taylor, Ken Sakaris, Simon Thornley, Ron Rabb, and we each gave 15, 20-minute presentations to a dozen people. And all of a sudden, I found others that actually were on the same wavelength.
Yes,
I went, I'm not mad. There's others that are thinking this way.
absolutely.
And so now, that was a dozen people at that time who listened. Not everyone believed, but there were a dozen people who listened. And now it's more and more and more. And that's the exciting thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're not up to 1 billion yet. We're not up to 10. We're not there yet.
Yes,
But we're on the right track.
we will be, and we will be. And the pandemic will has made us aware, and we have to become aware of this. We have to understand that this is how things work. And
I'm not worried about the coronavirus for
I'm
me.
not, I'm not
Okay.
worried either.
But I think if you're metabolically unwell, I'd
Yes,
be
then
worried.
absolutely.
I know some low carbers who've actually probably had it, and they got a bit crook, but they're still alive.
Yes, absolutely my thoughts. I'm not worried about it either. I'm just trying to, in fact, prolong my fasting hours, and I'm trying to eat better quality of, moving into good quality, more better quality of food. And that's what all I'm doing. And I'm not scared of it either. So I think,
We
yeah,
should all be doing that. That's all it is. It's maintain our health. And the best way to maintain our health is eat well, sleep well,
well,
exercise a bit, get some sunlight.
yes, absolutely. So I think this is the perfect take-home message. I completely believe in it. Eat well, sleep well, exercise, take some sunlight, and what else do you need? That's the key to a whole.
You need one other thing. It's called communication.
Mhm.
Okay. And if you've got family, that's fabulous. If you don't have family, then still communicate. That's called life.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree. I agree. So thank you so much for joining. I might one day maybe be able to come. Absolutely, absolutely,
Still have
absolutely.
health problems because people aren't eating it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, but
Look, thank you very much for your.
thank you. Time. Been such a pleasure, and so much more so much of an eye opener for everybody, and it's completely been my pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Gary, for here being with all of us today, and yes, we will make a difference. We will bring about this change. Thank
You're
you
just
so
standing
much.
up. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.